Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
What is coming up in 2017? Well, in January, all eyes will be on the Supreme Court. Its verdict on who has the right to trigger Article 50. Parliament or the government is expected to be announced early in the new year. And at the end of the month, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. We'll also have a new President of the European Parliament in January. Martin Schulz has already announced he won't serve a third term. In February, the other 27 members of the EU will meet at an informal summit to discuss their negotiation strategy for Brexit. And March is the big one. Theresa May has promised to trigger Article 50 by the end of the month, which will officially start the process of Britain's exit from the EU. In April, it's the first round of the French presidential elections. If no candidate wins an outright majority here, there will be a runoff between the top two candidates in early May. Also in May, there will be local elections in England, Scotland and Wales. And the Queen's speech will introduce the Great Repeal Bill, which will end the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice in the UK. Finally, in September, it's the German federal elections where Chancellor Angela Merkel will be vying for a fourth term at the helm. Plenty to keep everybody busy. And to discuss this further, I'm joined by Parliament's two newest members. Sarah Olney is the new Liberal Democrat MP for Richmond Park and Caroline Johnson is the new Conservative MP for Sleaford and North Hykeham. And she joins us from Lincoln. Welcome to both of you in what looks like another busy year in 2017. Caroline Johnson, you voted in favour of Brexit. What are your priorities for next year?
Well, my priorities for next year really are working as a constituency MP and representing the people of Sleaford and North Hykeham, as well as strengthening the government's majority in Parliament so that we can deliver on Brexit, but also the rest of the Conservative manifesto commitments.
Right. You said you're completely behind the government's plans for Brexit. Do you know what the government's plan is for Brexit then?
Well, the plan is to trigger Article 50 by the end of March.
That much we know.
That much we know. And then to concentrate on negotiating the very best deal we can, both with the European Union so that we can trade freely with them whilst having control of our borders and our laws, but also using the opportunity to also get good trade deals with other countries around the world.
Right, well done. You've read the memo from Theresa May. Sarah Olney, what are your New Year's resolutions in terms of your political agenda?
My political agenda? Well, I mean, like Caroline, I've obviously got some settling in to do, got to get round my constituency and start to meet people and make sure that I'm representing them properly. In terms of the politics, you know, in the Liberal Democrats, we're still very keen to see a much wider, much bigger discussion about the terms of our exit from the EU, and that's something that we'll continue to push for in Parliament.
Right, and are you going to vote against the triggering of Article 50?
Yes, I am. That was a...
Come what may.
I mean, we have to obviously see what exactly gets put before Parliament. I'm very hopeful that we will get a vote on Article 50 in Parliament. I think that's what the Supreme Court will give us in January. But yes, I mean, that was my commitment in my by-election campaign, and that's what I will do. Right,
but you'll vote against it whatever plan is laid before Parliament. I mean, even your Liberal Democrat colleagues are saying they wouldn't necessarily vote against it if they got a guarantee of a second referendum, for example.
That's right, but I mean, I've got my own personal mandate from the voters. If we were, that's what we really want, is to see a second referendum, and we think it's really, really important that, you know, the Leave vote didn't give a clear mandate for the terms on which we leave the European Union, and I think we need to do have a lot more discussion about exactly what that looks like.
Well, and on that, Caroline Johnson, your predecessor also voted for Brexit, but he resigned saying that ministers had ignored Parliament since the referendum. Was he right?
Well, I mean, you need to talk to Stephen about why he resigned.
Sure, but do you agree with him that that actually ministers have ignored Parliament since the referendum?
No, I don't agree with him. I think that what the point that's being made is a key one, which is that we need to negotiate the very best deal with the EU. And actually, whilst I think Theresa May has been very clear that we will leave the European Union and that her priorities in doing so are to ensure that we have control of our borders, sovereignty over our laws.
Would you like to see us leave the single market and the customs union?
Well, I think what we need to do is negotiate the best deal without discussing every nuance of the negotiations while we're doing so, because actually that doesn't help us get strongest hand.
Right, OK. I mean, if that is the case, and you say you have a personal mandate, Sarah Olney, to vote against the triggering of Article 50, going further than some of your Liberal Democrat colleagues, I mean, there are only about 3 other people who are going to join you in that. Ken Clarke is one from the Conservatives, David Lammy and Catherine West from Labour. Is there really any point?
I think it's just about sending a very clear message to Theresa May in whichever way we can, that Parliament want to have a greater say in the terms under which we leave the European Union, if that's what's going to happen.
Right. Well, let's talk about other things that are going to happen. They're ongoing at the moment. The strikes, for example. There's been talk about a Christmas of discontent, Caroline Johnson, and one of your Conservative colleagues, Chris Philp, wants more action to prevent unreasonable strikes. Would you back those sorts of proposals?
Sorry, excuse me. I've not seen the detail of Mr. Philp's proposals at this stage. Clearly, the strikes are very upsetting and disruptive for those people who aren't getting their trains on time and other things. But hopefully the unions will be able to come to some negotiated settlement.
I mean, there's no sign of that. There is at the moment. I mean, my question is, if there were moves to further strengthen the laws, because you just had the Trade Union Act, which was passed to strengthen the threshold at which strike action can take place. The strike action by rail drivers actually certainly met that threshold. Would you like to see even stronger anti-trade union legislation?
I think there has to be a balance between ensuring that the public can go about their daily life without strike action and a person's ability to make some sort of protest, and depending on what type of job they do, in some jobs that is already not allowed, is already banned, as it were. So I think the devil is in the detail with that.
Right, it always is in the detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
In your case, do you think that actually, when it comes to strikes, that there should be firmer action too? Would the Liberal Democrats support action to make it more difficult for people to go on strike, bearing in mind the disruption that has occurred?
Well, I think the right to strike is a fundamental freedom, and that's something that we would always defend.
But do you see the rail drivers' strike as an essential service on the railways?
There's no doubt that the rail drivers' strike has created enormous difficulties for people, particularly on the Southern Rail, right across the South East. I mean, people have had to leave their jobs because they can't get to work. So I'm disappointed that we haven't had a firmer intervention by the government with the Southern Rail franchise, because there's been problems on Southern Rail for over 2 years now. It's not just been strikes.
Like this.
But I think it's a combination of factors, and I do think that the government should have intervened.
Of factors. It's an outrage. It's an outrage what they're doing, destroying people's lives and their jobs.
Right. Well,
and actually, it's a monopoly. A monopoly should not be getting in the way of stopping ordinary, hard-working people getting to work.
And Zoe?
Can I just say, this argument, if you'll forgive the phrase, has its arse on backwards. As Sarah just said, there have been problems.
Never mind, we'll ignore that.
There have been problems on Southern for much longer than the industrial action, and the problems are caused by chronic underfunding
not of this scale,
and
please.
Price gouging. And it's absolutely straightforward. We shouldn't even be talking about this as a trades union problem. This is a problem with privatising the railway.
Right, and on that, are we going to see a Lib Dem surge? Are you the start of a Lib Dem surge?
I hope so. I would do very much in the vanguard.
Yeah. Well, good luck to both of you. Have a good 2017.
I've been getting away with it all my